All right, guys, we're working on our budget boat build that we started. We're trying to find out if it's worth fixing up an old boat for us do-it-yourselfers, or if you should just go to the dealership and buy yourself a new boat. In episode 9, we started with a $500 boat. It's a 1974 VIP. We got the interior ripped out, and then we found out the engine was seized up. So we got a used engine off Craigslist, and we got it to run. And then in episode 11, I got the floor sanded down, ready for us to install stringers. And so that's where we're at today. So I'm gonna show you guys what I think is the quickest way to get some good stringers and a solid floor in this boat, and that way we can get on to the fun stuff like installing the engine, wiring, things like that. So let's get going. So we have our empty boat hull, which dips down towards the bow, so it's not perfectly flat. And we have our stringers, which will be double layers of 3/4 inch plywood. Now we need to match the contours of the hull, so we'll set the stringers down in the boat and we'll scribe a line on the stringer so that when we cut along that line, the stringer will set perfectly down into the boat. And you guys can use this technique no matter what shape of hull you're working with. All right, so I'm up here in the front of the boat, so you can see this part, a little below 8 inches of depth. Doesn't quite make it past 10. So we're gonna go ahead and call that for now about 10 inches. Back here at the back of the boat, about 6.5 inches. So the length of this middle stringer looks like we're at 138 inches. We're gonna go ahead and add a couple inches like you guys are used to, do 140. All right, remember when we bought the cheapo plastic drop cloth? Lay it out. This is where we're going to glue the stringers up. There's a few ways you can do this next part of gluing the wood together. The epoxy resin, a lot of people do that, or the polyester resin, whatever you're using. Wood glue, which is what I'm going to do. It's a little cheaper. The old Titebond 3, it's waterproof, so that'll be fine. Alright, we've got the stringer screwed and glued. I'm going to let this set up for a minute. Then we'll turn it on its side. I'll get the hand planer out, knock down any high spots. Okay, so we've got the stringer nice and routed smooth. On the top side, did the 3/8 inch radius. You might get some areas like this where the starts to delaminate. Just get some glue in here, clamp it, it'll be fine. Next, we'll get it inside the boat and measure it to fit. Don't flood it. This stringer is 4 inches taller than it should be at the back. So we want to match the front to be 4 inches higher than it should be as well. You can use shims, pieces of wood under the stringer to get it to where you need it to be. And I've already done that up here. It's really hard to tell, but it is 4 inches taller than it should be up here at the front as well. Okay, then you want to make a little tool like this. You can make it out of metal, wood, 3D print it. There's a million different ways to make these, but the idea is it's going to hold your pen or pencil at the distance from the floor that we just measured we need to remove. So we know it's 4 inches that needs to come off the entire length of this stringer. So adjust the pencil. Okay, 4 inches right there. And then what we'll do, come along the entire length of this stringer and scribe a line. Okay, so first pass on the cut, got that done. You can see kind of the shape that it's made. So you can see this dip here, and then it gets thin right at the end, at the back of the boat. Now the moment of truth. Set it down in here, see if we're anywhere close. So I hit the bottom of this stringer with the planer, and it fits pretty good. I'm gonna get you in here close so you can check it out. Slide it right up against the hole, kind of in through here. Still got just some small, 1/8 inch gap there maybe. Let's get up here. Yeah, here's probably the worst spot. So maybe a little more than 1/8 of an inch under there. That's good enough for government work, especially for a budget boat. The worst part about doing this is you realize you've got to do 2 more stringers, but this is the hardest one. It's the full length of the boat. These 2 next ones won't be too bad. Ta-da! All right, so I've got the other 2 stringers in here, and they fit pretty good. I've got some shims under that one down there, so there's some gaps to fill in with the thickened epoxy, but it'll be just fine. Now that the stringers are ready to be bedded in, it's time for chemical fun. So we're gonna get the resin out. We've got to bed the stringers. So if you look at our side profile, that's this bottom part here, and then the fillets on each side. So that's going to be the epoxy and some silica to thicken it. So let's get started on that. I've got the epoxy out. So it's 3 parts resin to 1 part hardener. Then we're gonna get some of our Cabasil to thicken it up. Then I'm gonna put it in some Ziploc baggies, cut the ends off, and then do it like icing on a cake. Now we've got the stringers bedded in the thickened epoxy, and we've made a 1/2 inch radius fillet at the bottom, also out of that thickened epoxy. We've got a 3/8 inch radius on the top of the stringers, so now we're ready to lay fiberglass over the top of these. So this is the 1708 fiberglass I talked about in the last video. Pretty thick stuff, and we're gonna measure how long the stringers need to be and how wide the pieces need to be and get to cutting. so once you have your fiberglass strips cut out and you're ready to start fiberglassing, you want to do it all at once. So if you put one layer of fiberglass down with epoxy and you let it cure, the next layer, you've got to sand everything down first because it won't bond. If you do all the layers at once while the epoxy is still tacky, it'll be a chemical bond. You don't have to sand in between layers. Now this epoxy doesn't soak very good through this thick fiberglass, so you want to pull it up first, pre-wet the wood and the bottom of the boat, then put your fiberglass down, then put more epoxy on top. I'm just going to scribe along the bottom of the boat so I know how far to wet out the bottom of the boat with epoxy, and then the fun begins. Okay guys, the stringers are done as far as I'm concerned. I made a game time decision to go with just 2 layers of this fiberglass. I was gonna do 3 originally. I'm gonna do 3 on the houseboat, but I just forgot how strong epoxy is. I mean, this is ridiculous. This isn't going anywhere, so I think 2 layers is good enough for a little bitty boat like this. I like it. Now, as far as current budget, I've gone through 2 gallons of epoxy at $60 a piece to do these 3 stringers. So after doing the engine mount back here and then getting the actual wood floor in, we might be 3 or 4 gallons in on epoxy. We'll see. Check it out. Okay. We'll come in here, we'll do the same thing as we did with the stringers, where we'll do some thickened epoxy. We'll make a fillet along the edge. We'll fiberglass on top, and then the floor will be done. This thing is indestructible now. If I tried to do that on the original floor, I'd have gone right through the bottom of the boat doing that. All right guys, we got it done, so let me give you a little tour here. So here's the final build specs for this floor. So we did the 3 stringers in 2 layers of 3/4 inch plywood. We did 2 layers of 1708 fiberglass over the top. The floor is 5/8 inch plywood. It's covered with 10-ounce cloth fiberglass. We countersunk all the screw holes that hold it down to the stringers, and those are filled in with thickened epoxy. We did an engine mount out of 4x4 plywood, fiberglassed over the top of it. I've got a drainage tube that we put in the bottom so that no matter what water may end up in this hole one day, we can at least drain it out. So here is our running total so far. So we're at $2,738 for the total. Not much of a budget boat so far, especially when it still looks like this, but I think we'll be all right. So we're gonna keep going on this budget boat project until it's done. So you guys subscribe if you wanna keep up with it, and we'll see you guys on the next one.